Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the SEC Conference Call, your ultimate guide to one of the nation's best basketball conferences. This show is your courtside seats for all of the great action. We will spotlight the players to watch, take you inside the huddle with the coach's playbook, and deliver the expert analysis you've come to expect from us here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. We're thrilled to cover the heart-pounding action of this incredible conference. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP. And don't forget to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for all of our fantastic blogs and to learn how you can join the Crunch Time Express with one of our handicapping packages. Whether you're looking for an edge in sports wagering or just want more insights, we've got you covered. 16 teams, one conference, infinite excitement. The SEC has been the stage for legendary players, iconic coaches, and unforgettable rivalries. This is where passion meets competition and championship dreams are forged. Welcome to the SEC Conference Call. And now let's head to the studio with our host, Jessica, and our founder and senior analyst, Kenneth.
Welcome back to the SEC Conference Call. Another week, another round of intense SEC basketball showdowns, and we're inching closer to March. Let's take a look at this week's slate of games. First up, the Georgia Bulldogs head to Tuscaloosa to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide at Coleman Coliseum. Can the Bulldogs shock the Tide, or will Alabama continue its dominance at home? In Lexington, it's a blue blood battle as the Arkansas Razorbacks take on the Kentucky Wildcats at Rupp Arena. Both teams are looking to make a statement who comes out on top. The Texas Longhorns travel to Baton Rouge to face the LSU Tigers at the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. This matchup could be pivotal for both teams as they fight for positioning in the standings. Auburn hits the road to battle Ole Miss in Lloyd Noble Center. Can the Tigers handle business away from home, or will the Rebels pull off a big win in Oxford? In Starkville, the Missouri Tigers face off against the Mississippi State Bulldogs at the Sandy and John Black Pavilion. Both teams are looking to climb the conference rankings. Who gets the job done? The Vanderbilt Commodores make the trip to Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners at Lloyd Noble Center. Can Vandy find their rhythm on the road, or will the Sooners protect their home floor? In Columbia, the Aggies go head-to-head with the South Carolina Gamecocks at Colonial Life Arena. The Aggies need a big road win, but South Carolina is looking to defend their turf. And finally, a must-watch matchup is our game of the week in Knoxville as the Florida Gators visit the Tennessee Volunteers at Thompson Bowling Arena. With both teams vying for conference supremacy, this game could go down to the wire. A loaded schedule, high-stakes matchups, and teams fighting for their postseason lives. It's another can't-miss week in this conference. Now, let me welcome in Tina for a look at the conference standings.
Thanks, Jessica. We've officially hit the halfway mark in SEC conference play, and the standings are starting to take shape. Some teams are surging toward the top, while others are looking for answers as we head into the back half of the schedule. Let's break it down. At the top of the conference, the Auburn Tigers remain unbeaten in league play at 7-0, sitting at number 2 in the rankings. Right behind them, Florida and Alabama are also making strong cases for SEC supremacy, with the Gators sitting at 5-2 and the Tide at 7-1, currently holding the number 1 and number 3 spots, respectively. The middle of the pack is a dogfight with Missouri 5-2, number 6, Ole Miss 5-3, number 7, and Texas A&M 5-3, number 9, all jockeying for position. Meanwhile, Kentucky 4-3, number 4, Mississippi State 4-4, number 8, Tennessee 4-4, number 5, and Vanderbilt 4-3, number 11, are staying within striking distance as we move closer to tournament time. On the outside looking in, Georgia 3-5, number 12, Texas 3-5, number 10, and Oklahoma 2-5, number 13, need to string together some wins if they want to climb into the upper half of the conference. Meanwhile, it's been a brutal stretch for LSU, 1-6, number 14, and Arkansas, 1-6, number 15, as both programs try to turn things around. But the biggest struggle so far? South Carolina, still searching for their first conference win at 0-8, sitting at the bottom of the standings. With just 1 month left until the SEC tournament, every game from here on out carries even more weight. Who will make a push? Who will stumble? The second half of SEC play is set up to be a wild ride. And now to break down the slate of games on Saturday is our founder and senior analyst, Kenneth. Take it away. Away.
And Tina, Jessica, fantastic job, ladies, as always, with the lead in. Folks, Kenneth here, senior analyst and founder of this great company. I'm blessed to have this fantastic team with me. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. We got eight games to break down and not a whole lot of time to do it. So ladies, put me on the clock, and Tina, give me some music. And folks, to quote my mentor, Brent Musburger, you are looking live at Coleman Coliseum, home of the Alabama Crimson Tide, as they welcome in those Bulldogs from Georgia. Folks, the Georgia Bulldogs enter this game with a 15-6 record, 3-5 in the conference. They are our 46th power-ranked team in the nation. The Bulldogs winning their last contest and have played 10 quality opponents, winning 4 of those matchups. Their strength of schedule ranks 46th, and their SRS rankings 36. Head coach Michael White has the Georgia Bulldogs playing solid defense, but their offensive efficiency has been inconsistent in conference play. The Alabama Crimson Tide, 18-3 on the season, 7-1 in conference play. They rank 7th in our power rankings. The Crimson Tide on a 4-game winning streak. They played 15 quality opponents, 12 of those by wins, 3 by loss. Their strength of schedule is the best in college basketball, and their SRS rankings 5th in the nation. Head coach Nate Oates has been operating this Alabama high-powered offense, number 1 scoring offense in the nation. Their defense still remains a bit of a concern. Let's go ahead and get into the matchup. Folks, as far as scoring efficiency goes, Alabama, like I said, leads the nation, 90.2 points per game. In SEC play, they still continue that dominant scoring, 89.5 points per game. Top scoring team in the conference. However, their defense does struggle, allowing 78.8 points per game. 333rd in the nation, folks. We got 364 teams that play Division I college basketball. And in conference play, allowing 81.9 points per game. Folks, 15th out of 16 teams in the Southeastern Conference. Georgia averages 76 points per game, 139th in the nation, but that drops to 66 points per game in SEC play, 13th in the conference. Their defense is much stronger, allowing just 66 points per game, 47th nationally, and in conference play, 69.5 points per game. Fourth best scoring defense in the conference. As far as shooting efficiency goes, the Alabama Crimson Tide shoots from the field about 47% overall. In SEC play, that only dips a little bit down to 46.6 in SEC play, third in the conference. Georgia, on the other hand, 47% from the field, but that drops in the conference down to 41%, 12th in the conference. As far as three-point shooting, Alabama makes about 33% of their three-point shots overall. That actually improves in conference at 34.4% in SEC play, fourth in the conference. Georgia shoots about 33% overall, but that drops even worse in SEC play, 28.5, 13th in the conference. As far as total rebounding percentage, folks, this Alabama team likes to hit the glass on both ends of the court. 55% total rebounding percentage. Fifth, when we get into SEC conference play, even gets better at 57%. Georgia, 55% total defensive rebounding percentage, but that dips significantly once we get into conference play, 50.5 overall. That's 10th in the conference. As far as offensive glass goes, Alabama grabs about 35% of their offensive rebounds and gets even better in conference play, 34%, third best. Georgia, 36% offensive rebounding percentage, but that drops down to 33% in Southeastern Conference play, fifth best. As far as defensive rebounding, Alabama ranks 8th in the SEC in defensive rebounding percentage at 69%, while Georgia ranks last in the Southeastern Conference in defensive rebounding percentage at 63.5. Folks, Georgia is going to have to play much better and hit the boards a little bit harder if they want to stay in this contest. As far as off opponent field goal percentage, Alabama allows their opponents to shoot about 41%. Folks, even a little bit worse in conference play, 42.2%. You want to talk about an Achilles heel for the Alabama Crimson Tide? That could definitely be one. Georgia allows their opponents to shoot about 39%. Third best in conference play, about 40%. So something to keep in mind there. As far as three-point field goal percentage, opponent three-point field goal percentage, Alabama does a great job of defending that three-point line. Matter of fact, these are two of the best three teams in conference play as far as defensive three-point field goal percentage. Both teams are at 28%, second and third, respectively. As far as ball movement goes, folks, this is something that I love talking about. Alabama averages 17 assists per game, Georgia only 13. As far as turnovers, Alabama's gotten better with the turnovers per game. That's down to 12.2 with that frenetic pace that they like to play at, something to keep in mind. Georgia averages 13 turnovers per game. Assist to turnover ratio, something that I learned from great coaches like Roy Williams and Dean Smith, that assist to turnover ratio. Alabama's 1.4 assist to turnover ratio, much better than that Georgia 1 assist to 1 turnover. Not good there for the Bulldogs. Got to get better with taking care of the ball. As far as clutch game situations, Georgia has been in 6 of those games. Alabama's been in 8. Georgia 4-2, Alabama 7-1. And when we look at free throw shooting, Georgia just a little bit better at 72%, Crimson Tide at 70. Let's give a couple of keys to this matchup here. Key for Georgia, must control the pace. We know Alabama at home wants to get that crowd rocking and rolling. Alabama thrives in high-tempo games, about 76 possessions per game. We saw when Alabama lost their game at home a couple of weeks ago to Ole Miss, Ole Miss was able to control the tempo. If Georgia has any hopes of staying in this number, they got to do a fantastic job of controlling the pace of this ball game. I mentioned defensive rebounding. Georgia ranks last in the SEC in defensive rebounding percentage, has to do a better job of keeping Alabama off of the offensive boards. And three-point shooting, the Bulldogs shoot just 28.5% from deep in SEC play. Got to do a much better job in that. As far as Alabama, Nate Oates, his team is going to push the pace quite a bit in this ball game. Alabama has the fastest pace in the SEC, could tire out this Georgia defense, and that's when you could see this game really get away. The three-point barrage, Alabama attempts over 30 threes per game, one of the highest rates in the country. If they're knocking down anywhere from 12 to 14 threes in this contest, it's going to be a long afternoon for the Bulldogs. And improve defensively for the Crimson Tide. Got to make sure that you keep that scoring down in this contest. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next contest here. And folks, you are looking live in beautiful Colonial Arena in Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks, as you heard Tina mention, winless in the conference, welcoming in the Texas A&M Aggies in this SEC showdown. Let's talk about those Aggies here for just a minute. They entered this contest with a 16-5 overall record, 5-3 in conference play, ranking 21st in our power rankings. The Aggies are coming off of a win in their last contest, 16 quality opponents, winning 11 of those matchups. Buzz Williams, one of the best defensive-minded head coaches in college basketball, has built this team around rebounding dominance, interior defense, and a very methodical half-court offense. The Gamecocks hold a 10-11 overall record, 0-8 in the conference. They rank 84th in our power rankings. The Gamecocks are on a brutal 8-game losing streak. They've played 11 quality opponents, 1-10 in those matchups. Their strength of schedule 38th in the nation, and head coach Lamont Paris is trying to get this team back on track by focusing on defensive rebounding, slowing the tempo, and perimeter defense. Let's take a look nationally here. Well, no, let's just stick with the conference scoring here for this matchup. In SEC play only, Texas A&M is only averaging 69.5 points per game. That's 12th in the conference. They're allowing 69.2 points per game. That's third best in the conference. As for South Carolina is only averaging 60 points per game in conference. They are allowing 70 points per game, so being outscored by 10 points per game. Huge advantage to Texas A&M with the better offense and defense, while South Carolina struggles to score efficiently, no doubt about it. As far as SEC play only, field goal percentage, the Aggies shoot about 42% from the field. That's 11th in the conference. 31.5% from downtown, 9th in the conference. Free throw shooting, 68.5% there for the Aggies. South Carolina, in conference play, they shoot under 40% from the field, 14th in the conference. Their three-point shooting, 27.5% from the three-point line, 15th best. And folks, they only shoot 69% from the free throw line as well. Whew, that is rough. Let's take a look at the assists per game, because this is something that I really want to look at. So the Aggies average about 12 assists per game, virtually almost 12 turnovers per game. So barely a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. That is not winning basketball. As for South Carolina, 13 assists per game, about 12.5 turnovers per game. So not a great job for either team in that category. Slight edge to South Carolina with the better assist to turnover ratio, but not by much. Texas A&M, 10 close games, 7-3 in those contests. We'll call it 69% from the free throw line. South Carolina, 2-5 in close games, 69% from the free throw line. Going to give a slight edge to the Aggies in close game situations, but both teams struggle from the free throw line. Something to keep in mind here if you're going to be looking at that line that came out just a couple of hours ago for this contest. All right, let's give some keys for this matchup here. And for the Aggies, they must continue to dominate the offensive glass. Texas A&M is an elite rebounding team while South Carolina struggles to secure the boards. Also for the Aggies, must control the tempo. A&M likes to play at a very slower, methodical pace, which could frustrate this South Carolina struggling offense. And then finally, for Texas A&M, win in transition. South Carolina's transition defense is one of their weak points, and A&M could take advantage of some fast break opportunities, get some of those easy baskets as they struggle in the half court as well. For the Gamecocks, keep it a low-scoring game. They don't have the firepower to win a shootout, so slowing the game down will benefit them significantly. They must get to the free throw line and then knock down a higher rate of their free throws. And then finally, perimeter defense. A&M is not a great three-point shooting team, but South Carolina still needs to limit those open looks for A&M. I think this could be a very tightly contested ball game. Could be a low-scoring contest in this matchup, so we'll see how that one plays out on Saturday morning. And folks, you are now looking live at the beautiful Lloyd Noble Center there on the campus of Oklahoma. Boomer Sooner, baby. All right, let's get to this matchup as the Vanderbilt Commodores anchor down, come into this matchup with a 16-4 overall record, 4-3 in conference play. They are our 38th power ranked team in the nation. Commodores winning their last contest, played 6 quality opponents, 3-3 in those matchups. Their first-year head coach doing a fantastic job there, and he's built this team around effective offensive execution and perimeter shooting. Oklahoma holds a 15-5 overall record, 2-5 in conference play. They had come in as our 43rd power-ranked team. Sooners coming off a loss in their last contest, have played 9 quality opponents, 4-5 in those contests. Head coach Moser has Oklahoma focusing on better ball movement, interior scoring, and defensive rebounding. Let's take a look at some of the information here that we're looking at from a scoring efficiency standpoint, and we're going to just focus right here on what they're doing in conference play because there is a significant drop off from what Vandy has done overall versus their conference numbers. So let's just stick with the conference number if you don't mind. Vandy comes in conference play, averaging about 71.5 points per game. That's 8th best in the conference. Defensively, they are allowing their opponents to score about 75 points per game, 12th in the conference. As far as the Sooners, come in averaging about 74 points per game in conference play. That's 7th best. Defensively, they allow their opponents about 78 points per game, 14th in the conference. As far as shooting efficiency goes from the field, in conference play only, Vandy is shooting about 40.5% from the field, 13th in the conference. While Oklahoma, surprisingly, is shooting about 48% from the field in conference play, 2nd best in the conference. Let's take a look at the three-point shooting. Vanderbilt ranks 8th in SEC play with 3-point field goal percentage at about 32.5%, while Oklahoma ranks 5th at 34%. Rebounding. A total rebounding percentage for Vanderbilt at 50%. Total rebounding percentage, that's 12th in conference play. Actually, they're not even that good. Only 46% in SEC play, while Oklahoma in SEC play is at 53%. So advantage there for Oklahoma. Both teams really struggle on the offensive boards. Vandy 10th in offensive rebounding in the conference, Oklahoma 12th. So that is something to definitely pay attention to. You're also looking at two of the worst defensive teams in the conference as far as opponent field goal percentage. Vandy is dead last. Their opponent shooting almost 49%. Oklahoma not much better. Their opponents are shooting about 46% from the field. That's 13th best. Both teams really struggle guarding the three-point line. Vandy dead last in the conference. Oklahoma 14th best. As far as ball movement and turnovers go, Vandy is about 15 assists per game. Oklahoma not too far behind at 14.7. Vandy does a much better job of taking care of the ball, only 9.5 turnovers per game. Oklahoma, almost 12 turnovers per game. As far as clutch game situations, Vandy has played 4 close games while Oklahoma's played 8. Vanderbilt 4-0 in those close games while Oklahoma 5-3. If this comes down to a free throw shooting team, both teams do a really good job at the foul stripe. Vanderbilt 74% from the free throw line, while Oklahoma is almost at 80% from the charity stripe. So that is why you probably see Oklahoma as a favorite going into this ball game. Let's get some keys for both teams in this matchup. For Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt must play better perimeter defense. Oklahoma ranks 5th in SEC play with their 3-point shooting. Vandy must close out on those 3-point shooters, contest those shots, and force Oklahoma off of that 3-point line. Next key for Vandy, they must win the turnover battle. Vandy has a +6 turnover advantage per game, and they must continue that trend. And I talked about it, the late game execution. Vandy 4-0 in close games, showing their ability to close out tight contests. For Oklahoma, must attack the paint. Oklahoma is one of the better shooting teams from the field in conference play, and they will need to dominate inside against Vanderbilt's kind of weaker interior defense. Control the pace. Oklahoma plays at a slightly slower tempo than Vandy, and they need to prevent Vandy from getting out in the transition. The way you do that, knock down shots, and then take care of the offensive glass, kind of not letting Vandy get out into transition early on in this ball game. Winning the rebound battle. Oklahoma 3rd in the SEC as far as defensive rebounding percentage at almost 72%. So limiting Vanderbilt's second chance opportunities will be key in this matchup. All right, let's take a look at our next contest, and that is the LSU Tigers welcoming in the Texas Longhorns at Pete Maravich Assembly Center there on the campus of LSU in beautiful Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where the LSU Tigers will play host to the Texas Longhorns in this SEC showdown. Both teams enter this contest trying to snap some losing streaks. Texas coming off of a loss in their last contest. LSU is desperately trying to end their 3-game losing slide. As far as conference standing and recent performance, the Longhorns 14-7 overall, 3-5 in SEC play, sitting in the middle of the conference play, but have fared better against quality teams, picking up 3 wins in 10 matchups thus far in the season. LSU, we mentioned it, team struggling, and that's being kind. 12-8 on the season, 1-6 in conference play. LSU is still searching for some consistency um, in conference play. They've just secured 2 wins out of 10 quality matchups. So both teams struggle really against quality opponents. Both teams' strength of schedule are virtually identical. Texas with the 66 best strength of schedule, LSU 69. So neither team has had a easy path, and we talked about how difficult this conference was going to be this year. It is definitely bearing fruit there for both of these teams. Let's take a look at some of the offensive comparison and defensive numbers here for both teams. Texas entered this game averaging about 78 points per game. That's 90th nationally, while LSU is about 79%, 74th nationally. In conference play, both teams have struggled to maintain offensive efficiency, while with Texas averaging about 71 points per game in conference play. That's ninth best. LSU about, let's call it 70 points per game in conference play. That's 11th. Defensively, Texas has a clear advantage here, allowing just 66 and a half points per game, while LSU defense been a little bit more vulnerable, averaging allowing their opponents about 71%. As far as field goal percentage, Texas hold a slight edge in this contest from the field, shooting about 48%. LSU just 46%. However, in conference play, LSU does shoot the ball just a little bit better, but folks, you're talking about horrible numbers here for both teams. 42.5% to Texas, 42.3%. For its 3-point shooting, Texas shoots about 30, let's call it about 37% from 3 this season, but in conference play, that dips way down to just 29% in conference play. LSU struggles even more hitting from the 3-point line, about 28% from deep in SEC play, 14th best in the conference. To say both teams struggle putting points on the basket, putting points on the board, definitely. I'm going to highlight just a couple of players from both teams in this matchup, because if they're going to win, they're going to need their 2 best scorers to really kind of go off in this ball game. For Texas, Trey Johnson and Jordan Pope have got to go for big time numbers in this ball game. You combine their scoring in conference play, they combine for about 30 points per game. As far as LSU, Cameron Carter and Jordan Sears both have to have big time games. Looking at Cameron Carter, almost 20 points per game, and Jordan about 13 points per game. Whichever duo has the better scoring day as far as this matchup goes, I think that's how we're going to be able to decide who's going to win this contest. Let's give some quick keys for both teams in this matchup. For Texas to win this contest, they must dominate the glass, especially against LSU's weak defensive rebounding numbers there in conference. Take advantage of LSU's poor perimeter defense. Opponents shoot about 35% from threes against them in SEC play. And as I mentioned, they must slow down Cameron Carter and force LSU's secondary scorers to beat them. For LSU to pull the upset, mild upset at home, but nonetheless upset, they must capitalize on their free throw opportunities. 76% as a team, slightly better than Texas. Secondly, they must avoid turnovers. LSU is averaging about 13 turnovers per game, while Texas forces 11 turnovers per game. Ride that home court energy and get Texas into foul trouble early in this contest. All right, Let's head to our next matchup with the Mississippi State Bulldogs taking on the Missouri Tigers. And this is a very interesting matchup, and we do love interesting matchups around these parts. Missouri enters this matchup with a 16-4 overall record, 5-2 in conference play, losing their last contest, having played 10 quality opponents, winning 6 of those matchups. Head coach Dennis Gates has built his team around efficient scoring, three-point shooting, and aggressive perimeter defense. The Bulldogs of Mississippi State holds a 16-5 record, 4-4 in conference play, also losing their last matchup. The Bulldogs, 10 quality opponents, they are 6-4 in those contests. Strong strength of schedule rankings, 26th. And head coach Chris Jans has built Mississippi State around a defensive intensity, rebounding, and controlling the pace of these contests. Let's take a look at how Missouri is doing in conference play, averaging about 75 points per game. That's fifth in the conference, allowing 72 points per game in conference play. That's seventh best in the conference. Mississippi State averaging 76 points per game in conference, fifth best, and 74.3 points per game allowed. That's 10th in the conference. Let's take a look at some of the key contributors in this contest, as both teams do a really good job of getting balanced scoring from their top 3 scorers. Same can be said for Mississippi State, as they have 5 guys that averages double figures, led by Josh Hubbard, who had a monster game in their last contest at against Alabama. Came a little bit short, but he had a dominant performance in that contest. I think whoever can get their best player going in this ball game, and for Missouri, that's going to be Tamar Bates. Comes in averaging about 14 points per game. Talked about Josh Hubbard for Mississippi State, averaging about 17 points per game. Gonna need your stars to come up big in this ball game, and I think that's going to be a big time key for whomever wins this contest. As I take a look at the assists per game here, I'm going to give the advantage. Well, the data is going to give the advantage to Mississippi State, as they average about 16 assists per game, while Missouri averages about 13.5. Both teams have a really good assist percentage. Mississippi State at 54%, while Missouri at 50%. As far as turnovers per game, both teams do a really good job of taking care of the ball. Mississippi State 10 turnovers per game, while Missouri is at 11. We talked about clutch situations. Both teams are really good in clutch game situations. Mississippi State 6-2 in those contests. Missouri 3-1 in those contests. So both teams, once again, really good job in close game settings there. Let's give some keys here for both teams in this contest. And let's start with sorry, we had a little bit of issue there with some of the graphics playing haywire. But keys for Missouri in this contest. Missouri must hit their three-point shots. Missouri is second best in SEC play as far as knocking down the three ball, almost 38%, while Mississippi State struggles to defend the perimeter. So key for Missouri must knock down those three-point baskets. Win the pace battle. Missouri plays at a much more up-tempo style, and they're going to need to push the pace in this contest and then stay competitive on the boards. Mississippi State is a superior rebounding team, so Missouri must avoid giving up a lot of second chance points in this contest. For Mississippi State, defending the perimeter is going to be a key. Missouri takes about 23 three-point shots per game, and they hit them at a pretty good rate, so must chase Missouri off of that three-point line. Control the glass. Mississippi State ranks 7th in the SEC in rebounding, and it must be an advantage against Missouri in this contest. And then take advantage of the turnovers. Now, Missouri only commits, like I said, 11 turnovers per game. Mississippi State has got to exploit those by converting those turnovers into easy opportunities, either at the rim or that wide open three-point shot in transition. I think this is going to be a very closely contested ball game. Looking forward to this matchup coming up on Saturday afternoon there. All right, and one of our other featured contests coming up, and that will be the Ole Miss Rebels will be welcoming in the top team in the country and in the conference, the Auburn Tigers. Auburn enters this game with a 19-1 record, 7-0 in conference play. They are our second team as far as the power rankings go. Auburn is on a 7-game winning streak, 13 quality opponents, 12-1 in those contests. Their only loss coming back early in the season there in Cameron Indoor Stadium there against the Duke Blue Devils. Head coach Bruce Pearl has his team playing at an elite level on both ends of the floor, ranking in the top 10 in multiple efficiency metrics here for us at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. As far as Ole Miss, the Rebels come into this contest with a 16-5 overall record, 5-3 in conference play. Ole Miss still ranked 23rd in our power rankings, did get a win in their last contest. 12 quality opponents faced on the season, 7-5 in those matchups. Head coach Chris Beard, also one of the best defensive minds in college basketball. His teams are fundamentally sound on the defensive end, especially playing strong perimeter defense and in close and clutch game situations. He definitely knows how to get his team across that finish line there. As far as scoring and offensive efficiency numbers go, you would expect Auburn to be highly ranked. They certainly are. This team in conference play 78 points per game in conference play, 4th in the conference. And they play a very solid brand of defense. In conference play, only allowing opponents 71 points per game, 6th best in the conference. As far as Ole Miss, the Rebels in conference play averaging about 71 points per game. That's 10th best in the conference. Defensively, this is the 2nd best scoring defense in the conference, allowing 68 points per game. As far as shooting efficiency goes, Auburn in conference play shooting about 45%, 5th best in the conference. Ole Miss doing a fantastic job as well, shooting about 43.5% there in conference play. That's 6th best in the conference. As far as the three ball goes in conference play only, Auburn shooting about 36% from three land, third best in the country. Ole Miss shooting about, let's call it 34%. That's sixth in the conference. As far as rebounding goes, Auburn in conference play, as far as total rebounding percentage, almost 53.5%, sixth best in the country, while Ole Miss struggles hitting the glass as they are the worst total rebounding percentage team in the conference. As far as offensive rebounding goes, something that I love to take a look at in conference play, Auburn about 33.7% offensive rebounding percentage. Ole Miss continues to be one of the worst teams as far as getting offensive rebounds, 17.7% in SEC play, worst in the conference. As far as opponent field goal percentage, in conference play, Auburn's opponents are shooting about 42% from the field. That's sixth best. Ole Miss is just a little bit better as they come in fourth in the SEC play as their opponents are only shooting 40% from the field. As far as opponent three-point shooting goes in conference play, Auburn ranks fourth in SEC play with their opponents shooting only 29% from the three-point line, while Ole Miss ranks first in the SEC where their opponents are only shooting 27.6% from the three-point line. So don't expect either team to be knocking out a high percentage from behind the three-point line, as both teams do a fantastic job of guarding shots from behind the arc there. As far as assists per game, Auburn does a great job of getting ball movement there, and it really bears out in several stats that I'm looking at right here, right now. Auburn averages 17 assists per game. Now, Ole Miss does a fantastic job with ball movement as well, as they're averaging about 15 and a half assists per game. Both teams get really good looks, and that bears out in their assist percentage. Auburn is at 56% on their assist percentage. Ole Miss even better at 58%. You're getting great shots, and that's because you're taking care of the ball. Both teams averaging about 9 turnovers per game. That is absolutely phenomenal there. So you're going to see both teams almost a 2-to-1 turnover assist to turnover ratio. That is absolutely phenomenal there. As far as close game and clutch situations, both teams do a really good job of winning those games that are really nip and tuck there in the final moments of each game. Auburn 6-1, Ole Miss 4-3. Let's give a couple of key players here. We know Johnny Broome, the big fella, back in the middle there for Auburn, averaging in conference play about 18 points per game, averaging about 4.5 rebounds per game. So want to see the big fella hit the glass just a little bit more there. And for Ole Miss, Sean Padula is now their leading scorer in conference play, averaging about a little over 14 points per game. That is 17th best in conference play, knocking down about 2.5 made 3-point shots per game there in conference play. That is top 10 in the conference. And he's shooting at about a 38.5% clip from downtown. So he's going to definitely have to knock down some threes in this ball game, as both teams kind of struggle from that. I'm going to give you a name to watch out in this contest. Not that he's a big time scorer, but in this contest could be. And that is for the Auburn Tigers. Miles Kelly comes in averaging about 12 points per game, makes about a little over 2 threes per game. But here's what I'm looking at. He's shooting about 46% from three-point line. He's in the top 10 in SEC play from downtown as far as that three-point shooting percentage goes. If Auburn can get Kelly to knock down 2, maybe even 3 threes in this ball game, could be enough to get them over the top in this contest. Let's give some keys for each team in this matchup. And let's start there with the Auburn Tigers. They must continue to dominate the glass. As I mentioned, Ole Miss, one of the worst rebounding teams in the SEC. When we're talking about conference play, Auburn must continue to dominate the boards there. As far as three-point shooting goes, Auburn ranks 3rd in the conference as far as three-point shooting goes. Must knock down those open shots. That's why I highlighted Miles Kelly for the Auburn Tigers. And then defensive pressure. Auburn forces about 11.5 turnovers per game. They'll need to try to turn over Ole Miss there and create some of those fast break opportunities. As far as Ole Miss, they must limit Auburn's three-point efficiency. They rank 1st in the SEC in opponent three-point field goal percentage at 27.6%, as I mentioned. Got to chase Auburn off of that three-point line. Control the tempo. Auburn likes to get up and down the court there with head coach Bruce Pearl. Ole Miss will need to play a similar style game like they did on the road against Alabama just a couple of weeks ago. And then finally, get to the free throw line. Ole Miss averages about 20 free throws per game, and they must take advantage of those opportunities when they get to the foul line. I think this is going to be a very closely contested ball game here. Take a look at that point spread before you go to the betting window on this contest. And Coach Calipari is going back to an arena where he called home for well over a decade. You are looking live at historical Rupp Arena as the Kentucky Wildcats welcome in former head coach John Calipari into this big-time matchup here for both teams. Arkansas enters this game with a 12-8 record. As you heard in the lead-in, only 1-6 in conference play. Arkansas ranks 52nd in our power rankings. Razorbacks lost their previous contest, and against quality opponents, folks, this team has really struggled. In 10 matchups, only winning 2 of those contests. John Calipari is searching for answers as Arkansas has really struggled in conference play, particularly on the offensive end of the floor and in late game situations. The Kentucky Wildcats, 15-5 on the season, 4-3 in conference play. Wildcats come into this game as our 16th power ranked team. Wildcats winning their last contest, and then against quality opponents this year, 12 of those contests, they're 7-5 in those matchups. Head coach Mark Pope for the Wildcats has Kentucky operating with one of the top offenses in the nation, but their defense has been inconsistent, particularly in SEC play. And speaking of those numbers, let's take a look at how both teams have struggled. Well, I shouldn't say struggle, but how both teams are performing in SEC play. Kentucky comes in averaging 86 points per game in conference play. That's second best in the conference, only behind Alabama, while Arkansas is being extremely nice about their offensive performance. They're 65.5 points per game. That is 15th in the conference. Now, Kentucky, as far as points allowed, Kentucky in conference games only allowing opponents 82.5 points per game, dead last in the conference. Arkansas, not much better, 74.5 points per game, 11th in the conference. Let's take a look at, now we know that Arkansas is without their leading scorer, Boogie Flan. He's going to miss the remaining part of the season. You're going to need DJ Wagner to really step up and probably become the leading scorer for this team if they have any hopes of getting a win there, especially on the road in Rupp Arena. As far as Kentucky goes, I'm not going to highlight their leading scorers. I'm going to give you a guy that's going to probably need to have a big game for Kentucky, and that is Kobe Bray. In 7 games in conference play, averaging about 23 minutes per game, just a tick below 10 points per game. He's a really good free throw shooter. Want to see him get to the foul line a little bit more than what he's been getting there. He shoots from the foul line at a 78% clip, knocks down about two threes per game, and he shoots 40, let's call it almost 45% from the 3-point line. If Kentucky can get, let's call it 15 points in this contest from Kobe Bray, that could be a big time advantage there for the Wildcats playing at home. Let's give some keys for each team as far as this matchup goes. And let's start with Arkansas. And for the Razorbacks, keys in this ball game, they got to find some kind of offensive consistency. The Razorbacks rank last in the SEC in both field goal percentage and 3-point field goal percentage in conference play. Just got to be better on the offensive end. Defensive rebounding. Kentucky is second in the SEC in defensive rebounding, so Arkansas might be limited as far as their second chance opportunities go. So get open looks and you got to knock them down. And then keep Kentucky out of transition. If anybody knows that crowd there in Rupp, it is John Calipari. Kentucky absolutely thrives as far as playing at a high-speed pace there. And if you get those Wildcats off and running, could be very problematic for a team that has proven that they struggle scoring the ball. For Kentucky, as I mentioned, they're going to push the tempo. Kentucky ranks second in the SEC in offensive pace, could wear down this Arkansas defense in this ball game. As far as 3-point efficiency goes, the Wildcats lead the SEC in 3-point percentage in conference play, about 42%. Now, a key for Kentucky on the defensive end, they got to improve their perimeter defense. And if they can not give Arkansas any not many wide open looks from the 3-point line, that could be a recipe for them leaving Rupp with a big time win over their former head coach there. Folks, that leaves us one game on the slate, and that is our SEC game of the week. So, Tina, give me that theme music. And folks, you are looking live at Thompson Bowling Arena, aka the Summit. This is a top-tier matchup in the SEC as the Tennessee Volunteers welcome in their bitter rivals in the Florida Gators. Doesn't matter the sport, these teams love to get after each other. And folks, this is a big-time game for the Tennessee Volunteers if they have any hope of winning that regular season SEC crown. Losers of 2 games straight while Florida comes in with a 3-game winning streak. Let's start right there with the visiting Florida Gators. Florida enters this matchup with an 18-2 record, 5-2 in conference play. They are our 5th power-ranked team overall. And as I mentioned, they're coming in with a 3-game winning streak. Played 9 quality opponents, 7 of those contests have entered with a win for the Florida Gators. Head coach Todd Golding has built Florida around a high-powered offensive efficiency and elite rebounding. The Tennessee Volunteers come into this contest 17-4, 4-4 in conference play. They still ranked 6th in our power rankings, as I mentioned, on that 2-game losing streak. 7-4 against quality opponents. Rick Barnes has built this team around elite defensive efficiency, rebounding, and methodical offensive execution. Folks, let's take a look at the matchup because I think this end of the court may be the tail of the tape. In conference play, the Florida Gators average about 81.5 points per game, third best in the conference. As far as Tennessee in conference play, only 65.5 points per game, 14th best. This team is struggling to put points on the board. As far as points per game allowed in conference play, Florida allows about 72 points per game. Tennessee only 62.5 points per game. That is top in conference play. Let's take a look at a little bit deeper in conference play. Field goal percentage shooting in conference play. The Florida Gators shoot about 46% from the field in conference games. That's 4th best in the conference. Tennessee only 37.8% in conference game, 15th in the conference. Folks, we got 16 teams in the league. You're not going to win a lot of games if you can't put the ball in the basket. As far as 3-point shooting in conference play, Florida shoots about 33.4% from the 3-point line in conference play, 7th in the conference. Tennessee only 31% from behind the arc, 10th in the league. Let's take a look at the defensive numbers here. Yeah, that's the number I'm looking for. Okay, so as far as opponent field goal percentage shooting in conference games, the Gators allow their opponents to shoot about 41% from the field, 5th in the conference. We talked about Tennessee, how great they are on this side of the floor. Their opponents only shooting 39%. That's 2nd best in the conference. As far as guarding that 3-point line, both of these teams do a fantastic job of getting their opponents to really struggle from behind the arc. Florida, their opponents shooting from 3, 29%. 5th best in the conference. Tennessee, 1 spot behind them. Their opponents shooting 30% from behind the arc, 6th best in the conference. Both teams will turn you over as they both force 12 turnovers per game. That will be a key in this matchup. Both teams do a great job of taking care of the ball, as Tennessee only commits about 10 turnovers per game. Florida commits about 11 turnovers per game. So both teams do a really good job as far as that goes. If there is an advantage for Tennessee in this ball game, they do have just a slight edge at the free throw line. Tennessee shoots about 76% from the free throw line. The Florida Gators shooting at about 72% from the foul stripe there. Let's go ahead and crank that back up, Tina. And when I'm looking at key players in this ball game, I got to start there with the 3rd best leading scorer in the Southeastern Conference, and that is Walter Clayton Jr. Comes in averaging about 19 points per game, 3rd best in the conference. Folks, this young man knocks down about 2.5 threes per game, 9th best in the conference. And he's shooting from behind the arc at a 36% clip. But his teammate is just a little bit better in Elijah Martin. Comes in averaging about 18 points per game, 8th best in the conference. Makes almost 3 3-point shots per game, 5th best in the conference, and he's shooting it from behind the arc at a 39% clip. For the Tennessee Volunteers, they got to have a big game out of Chaz Lanier. This young man averages about 15 points per game. That's 12th best in the conference. Does a great job of getting to the foul line and then knocking down his free throws at an 84% clip, making almost 3 3-point shots per game. That's third best in the conference, and he shoots it at a 34% clip. Folks, if he is struggling from behind the arc, it's going to be a long night in Knoxville because they really, outside of our guy, Mr. Ziegler, who averages about 13 points per game, no other volunteer averages double figure. Now, I'm going to give you a key outside of those top scorers for each team. Will Richard for the Gators, he averages about 12 and a half points per game. Going to need a big-time performance from him on the road. And for Tennessee, Jordan Gainey must get into double figures as he averages about 9 points per game. Going to need a big-time performance from him in this contest if Tennessee is going to win and stay in the hunt in the SEC. Folks, keys to victory for both teams. Let's start there with the Gators. They must dominate the offensive board. Florida leads the SEC in offensive rebounding percentage at almost 41%, creating those second chance opportunities. Score efficiently in half-court situations. Tennessee is an elite defense, holding their opponents to about 39% field goal percentage in conference play. Must get out in transition before that defense can really set in and lock in. Limit turnovers, as I mentioned. Tennessee's defensive pressure forces about 12 turnovers per game. It will be key for Florida to take care of the ball in this matchup. As far as Tennessee goes, lockdown defensively. The Vols rank number 1 in the SEC in points allowed per game, 62.6 points per game. Find some kind of offensive rhythm. Tennessee, 37.8 from the field in conference play. That's 15th in the SEC. They must improve on that if they're going to win. And finally, defend that three-point line. Florida attempts 27 three-point shots per game, and they have multiple shooters that can knock down the three ball. Must defend the three-point line, Volunteers. If the Gators are knocking down the threes, going to be difficult for you in this matchup to get a very important win at home. Folks, that is the SEC conference call. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the SEC conference call. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things SEC basketball. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more basketball content. And make sure to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the SEC conference call.